Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Nevada Road Trip panel. I'm Mike Marriner. I'm president and co-founder of Roadtrip Nation. We are super excited to have you today. We have a really exciting panel focused on a project we did in Nevada, focused on the future of work in the state of Nevada, which at the time obviously was relevant in terms of career seekers trying to figure out what are their next steps towards future career paths. But now, as we all know, with the pandemic, everyone is trying to figure out, what has changed, what does the new landscape look like, and how do I navigate in a world that has been reshuffled pretty significantly. So as part of this panel, we are super excited to welcome the governor of Nevada, Steve Sisolak, Tom Dawson, the CEO of Strada, who is one of the funders of the project, Chris Reilly, the head of workforce development and education for Tesla, a significant local employer and also one of the funders of this project, and also one of the students who was on the road trip, Natalia Luna, and one of the interviewees on the road trip, Crystal Harvey, as well. So we'll have the session divided up into two halves. The first part focused on the funders and kind of the how behind this project came to life, and the why. And then the second part is really the voice of the people who are on the road trip, their experience, their learnings, and their insights. So thank you for joining us. First, a little bit on Roadtrip Nation. So Roadtrip Nation is a nonprofit based on the West Coast. We are part of the Strata Education Network, which is a network of nonprofits who are creating better connections between education and employment. Roadtrip Nation's mission is to empower all career seekers to define their own roads in life. There are two main parts of our work. The first part of Roadtrip Nation is the media side of what we do. That's how most people know about our work. We have a long-standing show on PBS and 60 million households every year, and content on YouTube Learning and public radio interstitials and everywhere that content is found today, all around empowering career seekers to define their own roads in life. But the second part of Roadtrip Nation that most people may not have as much awareness to is the workforce development side of Roadtrip Nation, which again, post-pandemic, is something that we are increasingly really leaning into to help people transition, reskill, upskill after a really difficult moment. And the workforce development side of Roadtrip Nation is anchored in a database, which is really our core asset from a mission impact standpoint. A database of over 8,000 video assets of people from all walks of life talking about their journeys and the paths they've taken and the insights gained as they've defined their own roads in life. And if there's one thing that we've learned after doing Roadtrip Nation for now over 15 years, is that young people and people at particularly vulnerable career transition points need to see people like them in pathways that represent the future of work. If I'm a military service member returning from service and thinking about transition, I need to not only see the 14 career pathways, but see stories of returning military service members and the unique paths they've taken in getting to where they are today. If I'm a single mother thinking about transition, I want to see the stories of other single mothers and the journeys they've taken and the very unique insights that can relate to my own story and my own journey. And so as part of Roadtrip Nation, these assets and archives and content, part of, we think the relevancy is not only the scale of the content, which is critical so that there's enough representation from every sense of the words that people can see their own reflection of their own journeys, but also the vulnerability in the storytelling. Again, especially since COVID hit, where people have been feeling increasingly isolated and alone and feeling like they're the only ones who are dealing with certain issues in their lives. We really believe in the power of human-centered storytelling, especially when aligned with workforce pathways, to show people that they're not alone. There's people out there that are traveling similar journeys. And so we dive deep into not only the components of people's journeys that are very workforce specific, but also their education pathways and all the data in terms of skills, very important, but also the unique hurdles that people may have overcome in getting to where they are today. If the database is really our core asset from a workforce development standpoint, the heart of Roadtrip Nation is still our road trips, which brings us to this project today. In the early days of Roadtrip Nation, we would just put road trips on the road to interview people in any career, put it on PBS. But as we started to realize that the deeper and broader mission impact for Roadtrip Nation was this database, and giving a broader set of individuals beyond the motorhome that sense of visibility and role modeling opportunity to pathways for their future, we realized we needed to be more topical with our road trips and to drive more representation and equity and access in the database. And so that turned us to driving more thematic road trips for Roadtrip Nation. One of our first was the Women in Science road trip. in partnership with the AT&T Foundation, where we had a team of 3 young women in science from our network who we noticed that there was a lot of young women in science saying, hey, I'm interested in science and the STEM fields, but I don't really know if there's a place for me in the future of science because I've never met a woman in the future of science in terms of those pathways. And so these 3 young women took a road trip across America and interviewed women in science all across the country about their personal journeys and the steps they've taken in getting to where they are today. Of course, there was the documentary on PBS and 60 million households, but it was really the shorter form content that programmatically, was a deeper driver. And so one of the recent road trips that we conducted right before the pandemic hit was in Nevada. And we realized that especially right now, the future of workforce development is so complex and so nuanced region by region that to almost take a national approach, to be honest, is challenging. And so in Nevada, we realized our first ever regional road trip was in Indiana in partnership with Strada and Governor Holcomb there. And we did a regional road trip in the state of Indiana. It was our first Emmy nomination for Road Trip Nation. And we realized that going place-based and going and regionalizing your work and the storytelling allows you to bring in a deeper set of constituents, including employers, like in this case, Tesla, the local state agency, in this case, Governor Sisolak and his incredible team, the Department of Education. And then of course, having nonprofit funder support like from Strata was a massive shot in the arm as well. But for this road trip, which we'll talk about today, we had a team of 3 Nevada students who were all thinking about the future of work and kind of where their place was in the future of Nevada and wanting to really see, was there a place for them in the future of work in the state of Nevada? So we had 3 students who represent the future face of workers in the great state of Nevada, who all hit the road across the state and interviewed people in various career pathways to learn the steps they've taken in getting to where they are today. That work has now continued in partnership with the Nevada Workforce Development Agency, where we've now created a hub for all youth across the state to access to, even if all Nevada students weren't lucky enough to live in the motorhome, now there's a place where any Nevada youth can come to explore career pathways in the state, many of which were generated and produced from the road trip, curated content along themes of resiliency and persistence of how students and youth can get through this difficult moment, amplification centering on local nonprofit work. We know it takes a village to solve many of these complex problems. And then over 200 different day in the life videos. And one in particular I wanted to show you is Crystal Harvey, who's the assistant director of university at the Innovation Center, University of Nevada, Reno. She's on the panel today. We're excited to hear her story and so many other stories talking about the future of work and how and what opportunities exist in the state. So with that, I would like to play the first trailer of the Nevada road trip to give you all a sense of that project. And then we'll cue in from there into a pre-recorded panel with Governor Sisolak, Tom Dawson from Strata, and Chris Reilly from Tesla.
Nevada is most generally stereotyped one of 2 ways: the super Western vibe, gold mining, silver mining, or the Las Vegas gaming community. So like casinos, the Strip.
Before, you'd have to move up and out, like to California or New York or somewhere big so you could have an opportunity to put your degree to work. I think that's what's changing here, is that there's more diversification, there's more opportunities.
Back when I was entering the work world, Tesla didn't exist. This company and what this company is doing never would have been on my radar.
I was on the Board of Regents 20 years ago in Reno. That city is nothing like it was 20 years ago. And the change has just been absolutely amazing.
My big thing has been like experimenting, seeing new things to see if I want to change something or if I want to stay in school. The further and further I get into it, I'm like, I don't know about all this.
When I moved from Colombia, I was 8 years old. We moved to Las Vegas, Nevada. I've just been so fearful of like, okay, what career path to take? Am I gonna grow up to just be a waitress at a casino?
All of the stuff that is written on the calendar is stuff that I have to do, be at, or participate in. I haven't really found the lines to connect my strengths to like what I want to do. That's kind of like my biggest obstacle, is not enough time to just think, like just to stop and like figure it out.
Like, how does that work?
Yeah, how does that work?
Yeah, there's no way. Wait, yeah. Oh!
We're gonna break the RV.
Send help, please. We are
driving a 37-foot RV around the state of Nevada, interviewing leading tech industries and engineering companies to try and figure out what the future is for Nevada's workforce.
I just thought mining was really cool. It was something challenging.
Is this safe?
Don't go that way. Don't go that way.
What we're attempting to do here, it's risky
For what reasons?
because it's a paradigm shift.
Learning from other people how I can use my skill set to like make something of myself.
Wait, you guys sleep in here too?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you live in this?
Who drives?
We all do. I drove here.
Am I that dirty?
he did not take a shower. I can tell already. Everybody here in Nevada is just like super hardworking.
Nevada has a lot more to offer than I thought it did. Have you ever seen that? There were things that were like 10 minutes away that were just pools of life that I had never discovered or even looked into.
Where you end up and where you think you're gonna end up are never even close.
I think we can furtively say that this bed is not the coolest anymore.
Okay, I'll take that one then. You can have this one.
But that's not what I was saying.
All right. Well, we'd like to welcome the three individuals who made the Nevada road trip possible to help explore what the future of work looks like in the state for the next generation. First, Governor Steve Sisolak, thanks so much for joining us today. And also Chris
you.
Reilly from Tesla, Head of Workforce and Talent for Tesla, and Tom Dawson, who's CEO of Strata Education Network. So thanks to the three of you for helping to get our road trip on the road in the great state of Nevada, and for sharing a little bit of your time and insight today in terms of how that project came to be. So
Great. Thanks for having me.
absolutely.
Thanks,
So Governor, let's start with you. Can you any reactions to that film or the project, or kind of when people think about the future of work in the state of Nevada and all the incredible change and innovation that's happening here? Any reactions to that video or the project, or thoughts on the future of work in the state?
Well, the video took me back when you were in the parking lot here with the RV, and all of you crammed into that little RV. I give you a lot of credit for taking that on the trip across the state. We're doing a lot in the state of Nevada. Last legislative session, we focused on clean energy, our infrastructure, the electric highway, EV charging stations, that sort of thing. So it's playing out across the entire state of Nevada. We're focused on the future. We're focused on good jobs and renewable part of jobs, and recognizing the environment and how we need to protect it.
So Governor, we know you just got out of some really successful legislative sessions around clean energy and the future of work in Nevada as it relates to clean energy. Can you talk a little bit about how that might affect the future of work in the state and opportunity for the next generation?
Sure. What we did this last legislative session, we focused on a lot of energy, environmental issues. We did a lot on the green energy. We did something on water conservation because there's obviously a water shortage in the West. We did a lot of things on wildfires because wildfires can continue to move forward. But what we're looking at is developing an infrastructure where the next generation of jobs that are going to be coming to Nevada are hopefully going to be more remote. We learned a lot about remote jobs during this pandemic and getting people to do their work from home, from another location. And also the clean energy part of that, where we're not burning so much in the way of fossil fuels and using water resources in order for our economy to diversify a little bit and to grow. So those are going to be focuses that we have moving forward.
That's awesome. And that's probably a good segue over to Chris from the Tesla standpoint. As you guys think about the talent pipeline in Nevada, I mean, it sounds like the opportunity is significant for the future of work in Nevada, and Tesla is obviously a major player in the state of the Gigafactory, and obviously our one of our primary partners and funders for the Nevada road trip, which was just an awesome collaboration. But as you think about the talent pipeline in Nevada, and as young people think about the next generation of their careers in the state, like how do you think about preparing them for jobs at Tesla? How are you thinking about that?
Absolutely, and thanks so much, Mike and Governor, to talk a bit more about this. I mean, when we think about growing our workforce here, and from a recruiting standpoint, we want to be able to, of course, move quick, but we also want to be able to focus on building sustainable talent pipelines within our communities. And so when I think about opportunities to inspire students and share the diverse set of roles and industries that are building in Nevada at such a rapid pace, this becomes a really exciting moment for us to be able to show students, what's going on inside of these companies, and reiterate that these opportunities are available, and specifically looking at students who are going through that question, either their senior year of high school or early on in college. What are these next steps for me, and to be able to showcase that you can come in and start making a difference in building your career at any one of these companies is really exciting.
And also, it sounds like to get a career at Tesla or anyone else, it doesn't require a 4-year degree anymore. And and I know, Governor, where you previously sat before you were governor on the Board of Regents, thinking about more flexible pathways in the state of Nevada between 2-year degree programs, certificate credentialing programs. Can either of you talk a little about the innovation that's happening in the state to kind of create more access and opportunity for more learners?
Well, I can tell you that in the state here, one of the things we focused on is we had a bill that passed, and I'm excited about, to look at our structure and our university system to break away potentially the community colleges from the universities, because it's really a different track. Having to get a baccalaureate degree or master's or doctorate is different than learning the work skill that you might get in an associate degree, to bring not only the trades forward, the building trades, but also to bring forward industry like coding and so forth and so on. And people don't need the same skill set that they need from a 4-year university. So we are focusing on providing that access to education and materials, so they can move forward in a different pathway if that's what students choose.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I mean, from our side, just to reiterate what the governor is sharing, it's it's not either or, it's a yes and mentality. Graduate from high school, start a career making a difference, and continue your education. And that can look, very differently in a lot of different ways. And so, as employers, it's about creating opportunities for students to be able to participate in those pathways and contribute. And that's been particularly exciting through working with the Nevada Department of Education on some of the automation technology career and technical education pathways. So you have students who are juniors and seniors taking very relevant coursework, and then coming and starting a career. Maybe it's a Tesla, maybe it's another company, but then also either through an apprenticeship or other opportunities, continuing their education at our community colleges. And so you start to see these programs growing and scaling. And then you also have opportunities for internships and continuing to grow full-time roles for university students during the summers, and maybe even part-time opportunity for those students, throughout their time during the year.
Mm-hmm. We certainly saw that on the Nevada road trip, just the spirit of collaboration in the state. And obviously there's so many complex issues going on. This was even before the pandemic hit, which we couldn't have ever predicted, the importance of that kind of coordination and engagement, now obviously, but, that spirit of coordination and kind of partnership between the government agencies, local employers like Tesla, education groups on the ground. I know, Tom, that's a big focus of Strada, and kind of that collaborative spirit, and how, there's a degree of humility and kind of acknowledgement that like a lot of the issues and problems associated with the future of work are really, really complicated, and there's no one silver bullet solution. Can you talk a little bit about the Strata model, kind of how Strata operates, and kind of that multi-sector, multi-agency, multi-nonprofit approach that Strata's, kind of harnessed?
Sure. If I'm honest about it, I think the governor and Chris really explained it as well as I could, which is, for Roadtrip and for the other affiliates that are part of the Strata network, the opportunity to work with a state and with a major global employer like the one Chris works for, that allows Strata to work at a level of scale to advance our mission that we don't typically work at. So, Mike, I think about, if all the road trip was designed to do was to serve those 3 students that were on the road trip with you guys, that would have an impact on those 3 students. But the opportunity to partner with a state, the opportunity to partner with a major global employer allows your reach and your impact to expand far, far, far more. And so we were thrilled to participate in this project. I think it's a model for our work with additional states and other large employers around the country. And so this was a great project for us to be involved with.
Can you talk a little about the mechanics behind it? So a lot of people watching this will be philanthropic individuals, CSR individuals. Like, it was a pretty unique funding model from, the Tesla CSR contribution, coordination with the state agency and the governor's office, but then also kind of the Strata philanthropic match funding mechanism. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that kind of worked?
Sure. I think in terms of this partnership, one thing that we've tried to make a distinction at Strata is that every party that we work with, whether it's one of our affiliates like you, or working with a state or an employer like Tesla or an external foundation, we all have to have skin in the game. And so we thought it was very important not only to ask the state and not only to ask, in this case, a major national employer to put skin in the game, but that we would also provide a grant. Typically, our grants, when they involve working with our affiliates, is to learn and research the effectiveness of the intervention that's being provided. And so we're thrilled to learn from this work and see what can be applied to lots of different geographies, lots of different states, employers around the country.
Awesome. Governor, since you were kind of uniquely interviewed along the road trip by the Roadtrippers, you were inside the motorhome, got to sign the ceiling of the motorhome, and you obviously got to share kind of your life wisdom and insight with those Roadtrippers, and then through the content, thereafter. And you heard some of the insights from the student Roadtrippers too, saying, hey, before the road trip, I only thought that my opportunity in Nevada was X, Y, and Z. And after the road trip, it's like, holy smokes, there's so much here. If you had a larger voice box to the next generation, to, students, learners, people at career transition points across America, especially post-pandemic, where people are really reassessing their futures, reassessing opportunities, their lives, like what picture would you paint for the future of work in Nevada in terms of opportunity?
Well, the opportunities in Nevada are basically limitless. People think when they think of Nevada, they think of we've got the Strip in Las Vegas and the casinos and the hospitality industry and conventions and whatnot. And that's all well and good, and that'll continue to grow. And then we've got the very rural areas with the mining and the ranches and so forth and so on. But there's an entire different area. The state has so much geographic room to grow and to bring other industries in. Our climate is great for the industries. We've got great tax structure in Nevada to bring new industries in and to diversify our economy and look at other opportunities that are available for young people. Like I say, a lot of the opportunities that the kids that are going to be involved with, when they say kids, I mean like the students you had on the road trip, we don't even know what they are yet, but we need to be prepared and have students ready to move forward and to become part of this, because they've got an awful lot to offer. We now have 3 Research One institutions in the state of Nevada, with University of Nevada, Reno, Las Vegas, and DRI that students can benefit from. So we're putting the infrastructure, the foundation in place so that students can learn the new skills that are going to be necessary for them to be able to succeed in the new economy that we're looking at in the future.
That's awesome. And Tom and Chris, like, you both are both national organizations. Chris, obviously Tesla, global major brand, Tom, major national, Strata, major national nonprofit. Can you talk a little about a place-based approach and how, even though your sites are national, why Nevada, why place-based? Why is that important to circle the wagons in that way? Tom, do you want to start?
Sure. So from our perspective, no student who's just trying to determine what they want to do with their life, or no adult that's trying to reskill. None of them work in a national labor market. If you're a student here in Indiana where I live, or if you're an adult looking to upscale in Las Vegas, you're dealing with very different regional labor markets. And so therefore, at least from Strata's perspective, being able to tie trends at the local level and really meet students' needs where they are is really important for us to advance our mission to improve pathways between education and employment, because it's most relevant to where that student or adult actually lives, and where they're trying to either get a job or move up in the workforce. So
And I think
Cool.
from our side, when we think about scaling up and sustaining our factories, it's very important to have that connection to the local community. You know, when we think about Nevada, we have well over 120 high schools across the state, and those high schools have 30,000 plus seniors that are graduating every year. And how do we, connect in a way that helps us bring these opportunities to these graduating students? And there's organizations like Jobs for Nevada's Graduates that's part of Jobs for America's Graduates, that Tom and the governor are both involved in as well. And that gives a single employer access, to 40 specialists across the state, and helps employers connect. So those types of programs, while being national, help an employer really connect at the local level and build a sustainable pipeline. And so when we look for how we could start to build this out and scale this, this is something we're thinking about doing independently at every single factory, and continuing to grow that.
Awesome. Thanks. And thanks to the three of you for your collaboration on this partnership. It was powerful for Roadtrip Nation, instead of just going coast to coast, to really zero in on one region and look at what does the future of work look like. And you're right, what's happening in Nevada is very different than Texas and very different than Virginia and South Carolina. And just the coordination with the governor's office and Department of Education and Tesla and Strada was a really powerful example for how to just go really, really deep in one particular region. So I just want to thank you both for your partnership. Look forward to do some deeper work there with the Workforce Development Agency and the new Workforce Hub. And then we'll end the session by showing the stop of the road trip as it went through the Gigafactory. Obviously, a really important part of the Nevada workforce, and we'll watch the tour of the Gigafactory right now. But thanks again thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
We're heading to the Tesla Gigafactory. The Gigafactory has been described as the machine that builds the machine.
In the middle of nowhere, and then you come around the corner and there's this huge factory. And it just kind of takes you by surprise. It's impressive.
We make the battery packs, the drive units for the Model 3 and the Model S and X. We make the energy products for both residential and industrial. This building is only a third of the way built. Right now, it already makes more lithium-ion rechargeable batteries than the rest of the world does combined.
I'm pretty sure I spent that entire tour open mouth gaping at everything that was going on. There's so many moving parts. Seeing that brought a whole new perspective on different jobs that there were out there.
Where they put the motors together. Those were the really big claw machines that were and those were pretty cool, yeah.
All right. Welcome back. We're really excited to transition into the next phase of the panel now with some of the road trippers, interviewees on the road trip. So first up, Natalia Luna. Feel free to jump on in, Natalia. Natalia was one of the student road trippers on the trip. You probably saw her in the trailer we saw earlier. So welcome, Natalia, to the panel. We're super excited to hear about your experience on the trip. Crystal Harvey as well. Crystal was one of the interviewees on the trip. Crystal is the assistant director of the University of Nevada, Reno Innovation Center. So welcome, Crystal. And Chris Reilly from Tesla, head of workforce development and education. So, all right, let's start with you, Natalia. Can you tell us a little, why don't we back way up and just tell us a little bit about your journey, your story, and kind of your road to the road trip, but a little bit about you and where you come from and your journey.
Yeah, so I was born in Colombia, South America. I moved to the US when I was about 8 to 9 years old, and lived in Florida, and then moved to Nevada right around the recession. So I saw how hard that was on the state. I saw how everyone was really affected by it. And it just became kind of like the norm that we were just kind of like that backward state, that we were last in education, kept going. Eventually got to the University of Nevada, Reno, major in economics and international relations. And throughout that journey, I think it was my last year, my senior year in college, I got really interested in tech. So a huge part of that was actually Tesla, being in Reno, of course, and really looking into all these technological factors of like emerging tech and the fourth industrial revolution. So that sparked some interest in what was my journey into coding world. So I started to learn a little bit about Python. And from there, I graduated college and I'm like, I have no idea what I want to do. And luckily, I found an internship in San Jose. So I ended up moving to California. I had a friend there. That was the only way I could afford to even be there in the first place because I'm a first generation student. So ended up doing that internship, learned a lot, and realized that the tech sector was something that I wanted to do. But my background in economics and international relations also made me want to explore possibilities of how to use that technology to better help the public sector or help people that came from a community like me. So that's my journey, and that led me into finding Roadtrip Nation from an email from an economics professor that was like, you should apply to this. You'd be perfect. You're from Nevada. You're in Nevada, and you've been in Vegas. And I looked into it, and I saw how cool everything looked, and how we wanted to showcase the workforce. And I didn't really know much about my own state. So that was the really thing that propelled me into it. The fact that I always told myself that I would never come back to Vegas. That was like the main thing. I was like, I'm never going back there. There's no opportunities there. There's no way I could ever make the life that I want to do for myself there. So it was an eye opener. So I did apply to be able to come on this road trip, and luckily got chosen. I have no idea why, but I'm very grateful for it because I learned so much about my own state.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, we know why you were selected, and we are so honored to have your talents and incredible journey represented on this trip. And Crystal, what about from your perspective, like, a little bit about your journey and what was your experience like, being at University of Nevada, and all of a sudden this huge green motorhome rolls up with Natalia and team. Like, what was your impressions of the students, the road trippers, and just what was the experience like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess first and foremost, it was a lot of fun. But I mean, I think with anyone getting interviewed, you're a little bit nervous and whatnot going into it. But with Natalia and Max and Michael, I was actually surprised at like how willing to be vulnerable with them I was. In the workforce, it's all about being really confident and putting your best foot forward and whatnot. But with them, they were trying to figure it out themselves as well. And so I felt like I had to honor that as an interviewee, So it was a lot of fun, but I was also really kind of impressed with what them as interviewers could bring out for me.
Can you share a little bit about your career journey and just your path? I mean, such an interesting, inspiring path. I mean, I just so some of the audience can get the experience that Natalia and team had.
Yeah, totally. So I've had a little bit of a twists and turns. So I started as a mechanical engineering major at UNR at the University of Reno, and worked as an R&D engineer and like what was supposed to be kind of my dream job right out of college. I was like, wow, I'm so lucky. But a couple years into that, it was a startup, and so a couple years into that, they lost a lot of their funding and ended up laying off their entire junior engineering team, myself included. But I actually kind of had an opportunity because I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. And so I had this kind of pivotal moment where I was like, okay, I could go find another engineering job in Nevada, or I could take a step back and see what I really wanted to do going forward. And I chose to go back to school to get my MBA and kind of switch into this business realm, and ended up at the Innovation Center. And I'm actually, during the pandemic, moved to a new position with a company called Bombora, and I haven't looked back. I love what I do, and kind of am blessed, I guess, with those opportunities. Cool. In Nevada is the crazy part. I remember graduating from high school and going like, well, I'm gonna have to go somewhere else to do something, and just opportunity after opportunity has presented itself in Nevada and in Reno. So yeah.
It's so cool to see that shift happening. Like Natalia said, coming out of high school, not really thinking that not a lot of pride for the state, where, all the stats you mentioned. And then now just like looking at the opportunity in the state now and the education system and we heard from the governor earlier. And Chris, that's got to make you feel good too, from where Tesla sits, to hear someone like Natalia saying, it was organizations like Tesla that made her realize that there was opportunity in the state. And, Tesla, that was obviously a huge move to come to Reno and launch, one of the Gigafactory. Can you talk a little bit about kind of your role in the state, and just, is Tesla conscious of that, of the impact it's having on, and the perception and the narrative change that's happening in the state that you've had kind of helped to shift?
I mean, for us, it was in 2013, and we were looking at how are we going to be able to scale to building 500,000 vehicles a year as a company, and running the math on that, we needed to double the world's lithium-ion battery production to be able to do that, and we wanted to do that in one place, and so to find a location in the U.S. That could scale and could move fast and be able to make this happen was incredibly important to us, because if we're going to be able to accelerate this transition to sustainable energy, every year, every month, every day, every hour counts. And so the ability to do that and find a home in Nevada for this factory that was just a few hours away from our Fremont factory at the time, and have a state that had such a mindset of let's get things done and let's make this happen. And so that's been a really exciting journey for us as we've seen this factory grow, along with Tesla and the community grow as well. Seeing these opportunities and being able to watch a documentary about so many different industries and businesses that are changing the landscape of the state coming to life. It's been exciting to see our suppliers moving into the region, and it kind of has this ecosystem effect for large businesses and small businesses. The food catering or the culinary program is local restaurants that have grown and then use that funding to open a location in downtown. So there's a lot of different effects that it's exciting to see.
Yeah, the food truck scene of the Gigafactory is pretty incredible. It's like food truck nation there, and Reno for that matter. Yeah, and Natalia, thinking about pre and post road trip, and coming back and now having that visibility to what's happening in the state, like how has it changed? Has it changed your mindset or point of view on opportunity in the state? Like, what is, where are you at now? Like, give us a little sense of your path today and your road after the road trip.
Yeah, so my road was really interesting right after Road Trip Nation, because one of the companies that we got to interview, AFWorks, I actually ended up finding a job posting on LinkedIn out of nowhere. I followed them right after we interviewed them. So literally maybe 3 weeks later, I saw that opening and applied. And I was like, what the heck? What do I got to lose? And at that moment, I was staying with my mom. It was December, it was Christmas. And I got a call back and I was so surprised and did the whole interview, went through 200 people or something like that. And ended up getting hired by a company I interviewed through Road Trip Nation. So that's been very cool to me, and just bizarre that would happen. And I think it goes back to that whole part of talent being universal, and opportunity really isn't, whether that is because you're not aware of the opportunities or because they might just not be near you. So in my case, it was something where I thought the opportunities weren't there, but really they were, and I just wasn't aware.
That's so awesome. And what a demonstration of the power of social capital as well, and putting yourself out there, whether it's in a green RV or however, and just meeting people, listening, honoring people's stories, building relationships, and somehow things connect, and we've seen that over 15 years of doing Road Trip Nation now. It's really the social capital building that comes from the road trip. The number one in some of our retrospective studies on the impact of students who've gone through this, getting to know someone, getting to meet people like them in a pathway that represents the future of work is the number one most impactful part of the trip by far. It's not, the motorhome is great, the traveling is great, but it's the relationships, and it's not transactional networking relationships. It's like meaningful storytelling, honoring people's journeys, relationships. And that you can't always tell how that connects later in life, but it always does, and it's first, congratulations. That's very exciting. and Crystal, when the team departed, you wrote on the top of the RV, you wrote, know your strengths and support your tribe. Can you kind of share a little bit, dive down that rabbit hole a little bit? Like, give us a sense of why that's so important and why that's important to you.
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's a lot of emphasis in like rounding yourself out and like improving things that you're not good at or whatnot. But kind of growing up, right? I realized that really leaning into your strengths can be far more powerful than just trying to round out your weaknesses. And so knowing them and leaning into them is something that I always kind of encourage younger folks that I'm working with, because like so often we're like just trying to improve all these other things. And with respect to supporting your tribe, that's the other half of it, right? Is that we all have our challenges and our weaknesses and everything like that. And it's up to our tribe, our team, our peers, our community to lean on them to support us where we need that support. And it's the combination of those two things that I think that really allow people to flourish and yeah, to flourish, period. So yeah, that's kind of my story behind that.
That's awesome. And Chris, I know a big part of your passion is just talent development, and like stories like we're listening to here. Is there a particular program that you're most proud of working at Tesla and, playing such an important big role in the local Nevada, workforce development scene? Any programs or experiences or moments that you're kind of most proud of?
I mean, pretty exciting to hear, Nathalia, that you're working at AFWorks now directly after this program. That's so special to hear, and congratulations again. I mean, this is building these types of programs, and I think one in particular has been that high school graduate pathway. Because it's an investment in time for a company to be able to build that out. But I was just walking through the cafe of our factory on the way here, and I see Dustin, who's going to be celebrating his 4th year at Tesla, who moved up from Las Vegas, and not knowing that Tesla was an opportunity in the state, and been promoted multiple times in a technician role, doing work that he's incredibly proud of. And so as that starts to scale, seeing that launch at every one of our factories, and knowing that that's a key way to help bring individuals from all walks of life into Tesla is really rewarding.
Cool. All right, we have a couple questions from the audience kind of piping in here. So one is, are these journeys expanding to other cities and states? The answer is yes. So, since the pandemic hit, obviously it wasn't a great time to do road trips. And so the road trips were on hold for the last year. And so what we did as Roadtrip Nation is we started expanding to more virtual content development, and expanding more of these place-based regional hubs. And we're really proud to partner with the state of Nevada and the Southern Nevada Workforce Development Agency to release the hub that we showed you earlier as a way for all youth to access this content. Only 3 lucky students get to go on the RV, so to speak, but it's really important from a Roadtrip Nation perspective to scale and expand and deepen that mission impact. And that's where these regional place-based hubs can, take the experience of Natalie and her road trippers and all of the individuals she interviewed, like Crystal Harvey, and through a kind of really thoughtful content development and the tagging system of that content, enable more career seekers across the state to access that. So what we've done in Nevada has now spread. We are partnering with Mayor Lightfoot in the city of Chicago and the Chicago Cook County Workforce Development Agency with Karen Norrington Reeves there to develop Chicago's first ever youth workforce development hub. We now also have partnerships with the Dallas and Houston workforce development agencies, where we are launching one of those hubs there later this year, and a Dallas to Houston future of workforce kind of corridor road trip later in the year, modeled after the work in Nevada as well, and a handful of others in the work. So that's this. The Nevada project was just an awesome step forward to Roadtrip Nation as a nonprofit as well, to kind of stretch new models for Roadtrip Nation. I think they always say crisis is the mother of invention, and that was definitely the case for us as Roadtrip Nation during the pandemic. So thanks for that question. Another question we have here is, what were some of the learnings, research, and insights from this particular project? Great question. I alluded to one of the earlier ones, but last year, Roadtrip Nation completed our first ever 15-year retrospective impact study on going back 15 years of students who've gone through these experiences and look back at where are they now, what was the impact. And there was a handful of impact points, but the number one point, exactly as you saw Natalia, mentioned earlier, is growth in social capital. And it was particularly more important for students from first generation backgrounds who maybe didn't grow up with those same built-in affinity groups. And so in particular, the piece about developmental social capital, which is the skills and the confidence to build your own social capital. And we're digging in deeper on this now in partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Equitable Futures initiative there. And a group out of UC Irvine called the Connected Learning Team. But we're studying a team of youth in Chicago who are going through we've now built a 5-lesson project-based learning experience, where youth who, even if they're not in the motorhome, they can still conduct interviews with people like Crystal in their communities via video conference or however, to learn about their personal journeys. And we're getting some really interesting data on the growth and developmental social capital, particularly around the cold calling part, which is really the confidence building part around expanding your hemisphere of people that you feel you have permission to reach out to. So something as simple as a cold call, we're finding is a really important part along that developmental social capital skill building process. So question for Chris. So since creativity is now the #1 skill needed in the workforce, what is Tesla doing to improve the creative thinking skills of their employees, such as divergent thinking, imagination training, bias management? Many people don't even know how to develop creative thinking. How are you addressing this, Janine?
All right, thank you for that question. I think for us, it's probably very heavily rooted in first principles, which is something we talk about every day at the company, and through every issue, every moment we need to solve something for, and it's not necessarily looking at how everyone else has done a challenge or taken on solving or scaling, but it's starting with physics, starting with the fundamentals. When we were thinking about workforce development,
I think Chris froze there for a second. We'll see if he comes back on.
All right, am I back? Sorry about that.
You're back. You're here. You're good. Keep going.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we gotcha. We gotcha. We got most of it.
Sorry,
we just missed like the last 10 seconds, the last little 10-second nugget there. All right, let's move on to the next question. So anonymous question, is Roadtrip likely to come to Africa? That is a great question. We are doing more place-based road trips. And to be honest, we have learned a ton through video conference as well, in terms of how to aggregate more stories from across the globe. There are obviously logistical challenges towards, taking or getting a road trip over there, but we did a road trip we have done global road trips. We did a road trip across Australia and New Zealand. We even funded a team to do a road trip across Israel years back. So yes, that is absolutely in the cards. We have no trips planned specifically for Africa in the near future. However, we are looking at developing a road trip focused on sustainability, green career pathways. We have a huge interest from Gen Z in career pathways focused on sustainability and the future of work. And it's a large area of opportunity as well. And you can't really talk about sustainability career pathways without thinking globally. And so we are looking at ways to create new road trip models that have this blended road trip, physical road trip, plus new video conference, virtual interviews done globally as well. So our virtual content development formats have come light years forward since the pandemic hit, as with many other pieces of technology for everyone. So we're looking at how to have that broader storytelling aggregation. So open to feedback too. Feel free to email us or find us through our website if you have any ideas for that. Very open to collaborating on that's one of the things I actually spend the most time thinking about, is like new road trips we should be designing in the future. So if you have any thoughts on that, feel free to reach out to us through our website. All right, well, why don't we end here by just offering, like, 1 minute of insight from each of you on just your road in life. And if you had the bullhorn here or the platform to, based on your personal journeys and your life learnings, if you could pay it forward, and if you had one piece of advice to people in the audience who are out there thinking about their own roads in life, everyone's journeys have been really reflective post-pandemic. If you had one bit of advice to the audience in terms of how they could define their roads in life, what would it be? Anyone can start. Natalia, I see you're off mute. Go for it.
Thank you. I think what I learned from all of this, part of it, and also just seeing how much Nevada has changed, and coming from a state where I always felt like there wasn't much pride in, that you are you're like an important part of a bigger whole. So never feel like you're not important, never feel like your dreams are too big. Always remember that, like, your path is not going to be linear. I think I learned that very well from everything I've done, from like moving from Colombia to living in Florida to moving to Nevada, ended up in Reno and then California and then back here. So for sure, I learned that my path is not linear and that my past doesn't necessarily define me forever, that I am, I can make my own destiny. That would be my advice to everyone. Just keep going.
Awesome. Thank you. Crystal?
Sure, yeah. You were talking about social capital with everyone who's gone on the road trip, and I really like that, because I feel like a lot of general advice is to be confident in yourself, and move forward and whatnot. And there's not quite as much emphasis placed on, well, how do I convince myself to be confident? How do I convince myself to actually take that step forward? And so my advice is to find people and tools that work for you, that boost your confidence. So whether it's a friend psyching you up before an event, or it's submitting the resume or whatever at 12 o'clock at night because you can't get yourself to do it some other time, is just finding the things that work for you to amp yourself up and find your confidence. Because like you've said with or what Natalia said, is that talent is everywhere. It's opportunity that's not. And so having the confidence to put your talent out there and finding ways to convince yourself to put your talent out there if you're not already in a position where you're really confident doing that. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Awesome. Chris?
I'll take it from the perspective as an employer side here, and just say, a next step would be, reaching out to the local school district and finding out, the vocational programs, so the relevant career and technical education programs, and then connecting with that teacher, and seeing what they're doing. Bring that teacher out to the office in the factory and see what opportunities can expand from there. We've had thousands of students, probably 3,000 plus, prior to the pandemic, visit Giga Factory Nevada and walk through and see what's going on here, and that becomes a powerful tool as well from an education standpoint, and we can build those opportunities no matter the size of the company. And it's really exciting. And again, sorry about the technical earlier. I was just saying the first principles, really thinking about things from unique perspectives, from fundamental physics, and then working at it from there. And some really creative solutions come out. That's a lot of the work we got to build here was a direct result of thinking about we have in the video earlier 120 high schools, 30,000 seniors. How do we connect and starting from there? So great questions, and thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks to the three of you. Thanks, Chris, for all that you and Tesla do in the state. Thank you, Natalia, for being our ambassador for Roadtrip Nation and the anchor and one of the faces for this project and all that you've done. And congratulations on your journey as it continues to unfold. And Crystal, thank you for sharing your story, meeting with our road trippers and being a part of our archive. So thanks to the three of you. Thanks for everyone watching this panel. And we wish you all the best. Farewell.